Hi everyone, we're live, we're good. Peter just helped me delete the massive Git repository I had opened on my own desktop from a year ago when I didn't know what Git was. So sorry, that's why we started a bit late.
Oh no.
Oh no, it looks weird. Oh, I fucked up. Okay, wait a second. You look
This
weird.
sounds so bad.
Does it? Did it change?
That's what Bloodstrive wrote.
Hmm.
Oh dear. All right. When you figured it all out, we can start doing some.
I apologize. Does it sound better now?
Rufio's mic is weird.
It does sound better.
I'm hearing you just fine, but make sure that OBS is using the right mic.
Yeah, I just barely
Yeah.
changed it. Okay, now I just have
Just
to.
as we do not see him. Have
I'm
you opened it?
working on it.
Have you screen shared the Google Meet, but you've opened the chat window?
So no, I just only it was only configured on the other screen. I just didn't take care of everything because I'm talented that way.
Master Firewall, my dope beanie.
Okay, wait a second. We're slowly getting there, kind of.
We're gonna have a fun TypeScript adventure.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Okay, now we have a little bit more of your face.
Drank.
You're so right.
You got a drink.
I'm too focused on not cutting your head off.
No time to drink.
Okay, we see a little bit of me in the corner. Wait a second. Yeah, we're gonna see a little bit of me because I can't do everything apparently. I might be able to cut the top of your head off a little bit. Everything is awesome.
I don't even work here. I watched the do you watch Seinfeld?
I've watched one Seinfeld.
Uh all good then.
Do you like Seinfeld?
I love Seinfeld.
Really? I feel like
Yeah.
Seinfeld is hit or miss, and for me it's just this huge miss. I don't know
Uh
why.
Well, there was this episode where Kramer just ends up getting like he just kind of rocks up to a job and just ends up making friends with everybody, just kind of joins the meeting and just becomes a worker. And then he eventually gets fired and it's like the boss is like, your reports, I don't know what to say. It's like you don't know what you're doing. It's like I'm gonna have to let you go. It's like, but I don't understand. I don't even really work here.
That's
That's what makes this so
fantastic.
difficult.
Oh, okay.
Man, Master
I'm
Firewall.
almost there. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right.
Lark. For lol.
So the
All right.
mic is better.
This is how
I think.
the first 10 minutes of every stream goes.
Yeah.
Test. 1 2 1 2 1 2
Thank goodness
1
everyone is
2
so forgiving.
1 2. I'll do a shout out.
Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Rufio. You've seen Peter here before, but this is Peter. And Peter, you can say who you are if you want to.
Hello, it's me. I'm Peter. So yeah, as a quick overview, I've been coding for the last, I don't know, 6 7 years. Mainly working in TypeScript at the moment professionally. Which is what we'll be learning today, doing some TypeScript. Hi, Lark. And yeah, we're just going to be going through some stuff and trying to do a better job at teaching TypeScript than that video that you kind of went through last time. That even going through that, I was like, I can kind of understand, but I'm confused, and I already know TypeScript, and this thing's confusing. Bloodstrive. That's a great question to start off with. Why does TypeScript use number instead of int? well, it's actually not so much why does TypeScript use it, but why does JavaScript? Like JavaScript doesn't actually have a concept of like ints and floats. They're just all into one number type, which is why they use the type of number, because JavaScript is built that way. It doesn't have a differentiation between floats and integers. So, with JavaScript being a dynamically typed language, that pretty much means that everything is assigned on heap memory, rather than like statically assigned on some sort of a stack. So because everything is so dynamic, including numbers, there's no explicit number and like there's no float and int to differentiate from each other. But yeah, all right. So TypeScript time. So we're in a fresh project here. We can do Rust next. That's it. I've been preparing for Rust. We'll do some.
Before we launch into it, Peter's watching my chat, everyone, but also Peter is live right now. So if you want Peter to see questions faster, you can also hop onto his stream and probably see it faster, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what priority chat questions? I don't know. You can double post your questions in both my chat and the other chat.
OMG,
oh my
Peter.
God, I can talk to him on that stream. That's
you
right,
can.
everyone.
You can. I don't have Peter's stream open, because I have a lot of things open right now. But
yeah, we don't want to crash the internet.
break the internet. And today we are doing TypeScript from scratch because, like Peter said, we did it on Monday and it was, and then Peter was like, "I can do it better." So we're gonna do it better. So.
Ian Alex Hart, thank you for the follow. Master Firewall, thanks for the follow. It's all coming in. Sorry. How is it being so handsome? Oh, stop it, you.
Roberto says, mind explaining the thing you said about the static, stack, and heap? I don't know what that means, but.
Oh, right. So Robertolo, isn't everything usually in the heap? A lot of things tend to be put in the heap. For dynamic languages, pretty much everything is in the heap. The thing, like if you're looking at statically typed languages like Rust, some things you can chuck on the some things that you don't have to put on the heap are like things that are known as having like sizes that don't change. But for the heap, because everything's dynamic and you can like reassign variables and what have you all the time. So pretty much everything's on the heap. But yeah, we use the heap for things where we don't know the size ahead of time. So we're kind of receiving unknown inputs. So that's when we would use the heap. But yeah, so not everything is in the heap. There is a difference between the two of them. But for JavaScript purposes and TypeScript purposes, pretty much I think everything is on the heap. Yeah. So now we've got some, so we're pretty much going to go from TypeScript from like ground zero. Like a lot of you who, haven't had a chance to use TypeScript yet, you probably also wonder like, how do I even use it? So I think it's kind of important to understand, how do we even use it? So on Rufio's console, we're also doing like a live share through VS Code. So what Rufio is going to do is you need to initialize a new like package, right? So you can use like Mpn init to initialize a new package.
Like a package.json?
Yeah, that'll create a package JSON for you. And then we use the
package
JSON
I fucked up.
So yeah, just kind of follow the prompts. You can name the package, I don't know, TypeScript fun or whatnot and whatever.
But I fucked up because I am in my main directory, remember? Because we were in that.
Yeah, you got to get into the right project. I think you had it in another folder.
Can I just do this? Will it work out for me? No.
No, I think you were like in another folder.
I was in desktop.
I think it was on desktop, yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
There we go. All right, now run npn init.
There we go.
There you go.
Maybe. Yes.
Right. Okay. So pretty much all JavaScript projects need a package JSON so you can install all your dependencies and have them listed in your package JSON.
Do you care what I put
So-
in here? Should I just enter?
Description, literally these kind of fields are useful if you're going to publish it, but we're not really going to publish it, so it's
Excellent.
fine. Yay. That's it. Cool. So now you have a package JSON file. Do you want to open that up?
Well,
Cool. So yeah, we've just got basic stuff in there. And then as we install things, a dependencies array will pop up as well. So TypeScript, believe it or not, is actually a package on itself. So we need to actually go off and install it. Now, you can do that by going npn install TypeScript.
just TypeScript.
That's it, just TypeScript. So this will install TypeScript, which is essentially like what TypeScript ends up being is it's a package that has utilities that take TypeScript code and make that into JavaScript code. So
Okay.
natively, like in the browser, it uses JavaScript only. So if you were to take a TypeScript file and try to run it in the browser, it would not work because TypeScript has extra symbols in it, like extra colons, extra like type annotations, and that kind of stuff. So you need to do what's called transpiling, which is effectively transforming your TypeScript code into a different format, which in this case would be JavaScript.
Isn't that
so
the
that you
same
can
thing
then run
as?
it in the browser.
Isn't it the same thing as compiling? What's the difference between transpiling and compiling?
I mean, in the sense that like we can kind of use them interchangeably. Compiling is, I guess you can also call it compiling, but more traditionally, I think compiling kind of makes things into like a standalone, like a standalone file. Like if you were to use a compiled language, you would take source code and compile it into a binary. Whereas with transpiling, it's almost like transforming one language into a different language, another like form of source code. So it's like technically like they're pretty much the same thing. So you could get away with using them interchangeably. So it's not a problem. Sir Lone Steak, thanks for the chat. Should we not add it to Dev Dependencies? Yeah, we totally could add it to Dev Dependencies. It doesn't really matter all that much. But yeah, I mean, you can just install it as a dev dependency if you want to organize your files, your dependencies into things that are used by the project and things that are used as build tools. So yeah, but honestly, for all intents and purposes, it really doesn't matter all that much. A lot of the time, you know, these build tools end up creating like a distributable output somehow, which doesn't have the dependencies in it. So you may be interested in separating dependencies from dev dependencies if you're making like a node project that, you know, needs to be as small as possible and only have runtime stuff in it. Like if you want to run a node process on the server somewhere and you want to keep that nice and small, you can only install dependencies after doing some dev stuff. So just to show how easy it is to switch it over to dev dependencies. So if you want, Rufio, you can, in your package.json file, you can add dev in front of dependencies. That key. So dev and then make it a capital D.
Capital D dev?
Sorry, capital D for dependencies. So like, and without the space.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah. So that, I think that's the right format. It's been a while since doing this manually, but yeah, so that just means that TypeScript will now be installed as a dev dependency. So if you do an Mpn install with a certain flag, I can't remember what the flag is.
I think it's like -dev or --dev for dev dependencies.
Or that's for installing it to dev dependencies. And there's like for installing only production ones, I think it's like --prod. You can actually find out if you go into your console and go npn install --help. We'll get we'll get some flags that you can use.
There we go.
So if you scroll up a bit and look at the options.
Found it.
Yeah, so there's yeah. I use Yarn, so I'm not 100% familiar with Mpn's. Like, it's been a while since I've used Mpn by itself. But yeah, there are flags to control the behavior of what you install. Anyway, so we've got Typescript installed. Now, when we're working on like a Node project, there is a useful tool called TS Node, which is TypeScript Node. So you know how when you were building your like other JavaScript projects, and you would run them by going node, and then you would specify a file to start with, like node server.js. So if you try to do a file like node and then run a TypeScript file, it won't work. It'll be like, hold on, I don't understand this file. So I'll show you what the error looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off, we're going to make a source folder in your TypeScript directory. Make a new folder, call it source. Make a new file in there, index.ts.
Okay.
And then make a function called foo.
Like this?
And inside that function, do a console log of like hello. Right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to now go to your back to your terminal and just try running that file. So run it with node. Go node source index.ts.
Did it do it?
Oh,
right?
sorry. We got to go back to the file. We actually got to run foo. I forgot. So just call foo after the function declaration. Yeah, nice. All right, cool. Right, so that worked. And the reason that worked is, irrespective of the file extension, this file is actually okay JavaScript. Like, there's actually no TypeScript stuff in this that would make it not work.
Okay.
Right? So, like, if we look at this, it's totally valid JavaScript as it is TypeScript. But now let's add something new to this. So can you make a new argument to foo and call it, I don't know, name?
Wait, argument as in like parameter or within?
Like a parameter. Yeah, that's right. So we're going to make a new parameter for this function, and we'll call it name. And then in console log, go make it so it goes hello name.
Actually, we're going to have to...
Yeah, nice. Using those literals. Heck yeah.
I know some stuff. A little bit, but some.
And now look what happened, right? So this is now our first kind of interaction with TypeScript, where hovering over this foo, we can see there's an error. And the error, pretty much self-explanatory. So Rufio, what does this error mean? And how do we fix it?
Oh, we would just give name a value. Like Peter.
Right. So this, in a nutshell, is why we like using TypeScript, right? Because if this was just a standard JavaScript file without any annotations, we wouldn't get hints like that, right? If we change what is effectively the interface of the function by adding new parameters, by changing those parameters' expected types, like, that won't be caught by JavaScript until we try to run it, and then it'll complain with an error. Like, it would say hello undefined and be like, crap. So that's why we choose to use TypeScript, because we get those annotations. Now, as it stands right now, this file is still valid JavaScript because we haven't added anything TypeScript yet. But if we hover over the name parameter, you'll see that it has type any. And that's because TypeScript is able to, most of the time, infer what a variable is. But for a function parameter, it has no idea until you tell it what that's supposed to be. So for a name, it would make sense to give it a type of string. Now, in TypeScript, there are multiple different types. You've got, type string, you've got type number, you've got an object type, you've got, what else is there? I mean, arrays, but arrays are technically objects. And, you've got functions, type of function. So you've got a bunch of types to choose from. TypeScript also includes an unknown type, which lets a function accept anything to come into it. And if you don't give it anything, the function will default to any. Hello.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we want to add our first type annotation. So what that means is we'll take our parameter and it takes it in the format of colon and then the type. So if you want to add a type annotation to name.
Where does it go after?
It goes after, yes.
Like string, like that?
Yeah, that's great. So now if you hover over name, you'll see that now the type is string. And if you hover over the other name, the other like variable there, string. So now it knows that you're expecting a string type to be given. So now if you go to the call site of foo and you change Peter to be like a number, so change the whole thing and make it like a number. Now hover over that error. What does that mean?
So it's saying it's a number, but it's supposed to be a string.
Mm-hmm. And now you can go to that error and you can fix it.
Right.
Done. And that's why we use TypeScript, everybody. That's why we do it.
So it's just to catch the problems before they become a big problem? Is that what's up?
Yeah, it's a what we call static analysis, where static is because we're not actually executing the code. We're just able to look at the source code and then determine, the problems before they arise. Bloodstripe. It's TypeScript on the resume now. Let's go.
We all can now.
That's it. And that's it, everybody. We now know TypeScript.
Goodbye. Thank you for coming. Good night.
Yeah, that's it. That's the end of the stream. So now that we've added this annotation for the, name has to be string, this is now no longer a valid JavaScript file. So if you try to run Node, see what happens.
Didn't like it.
All right, let's open up that error and see what the heck's going on.
Yeah. I mean, it might be descriptive, but it's not.
It's not being very descriptive, no. But essentially, it reached that colon and went, yo, I don't know what to do with this. This is wrong. Because it's not valid JavaScript. So Node will panic, right?
Okay.
So what we need to do is we need to convert this file into a valid JavaScript file through the process of transpilation, right?
Okay.
So when you install TypeScript, you also get access to a new function in this folder called TSC, the TypeScript Compiler. And to run that, I think if you run TSC like that, it might not work, but give it a go. See what happens if you run TSC just as is. There you go, it worked.
It did work?
Yeah, that's the output of that's TSC.
Oh.
So there's a lot of stuff here. It's pretty much telling you all of the possible functions just because you haven't given it any arguments. But what we're going to do is, and I'm going to have to bring up my reference as well. Yeah, there's a lot of options. It's a very complex beast. I'm going to open up my TypeScript CLI documentation, and I'm going to post that into your chat as well,
Okay.
so that you can see what I'm looking at. Command line. Hold on. So CLI. There we go. CLI options. So let's put that in both chats is what I'm looking at. So essentially, this is, once you've got that open, so using the CLI, so we've got a bunch of different flags here. What we'll do in a moment is we're going to add a tsconfig.json to your folder, so you can customize, so you don't have to call all these options all the time you want to run something. It'll find it by itself. But what we're going to do is we want to run tsc kind of like tsc source star ts, right? And that'll transpile all of our TypeScript code. And we'd want to put it in an out folder.
Like
so
this?
I think it was just out directory. Yeah. So let's have this open to the side here. So what you might want to run is source tsc source slash star ts.ts. So this, before you run this, so what this means is kind of look at the source directory and get any file that matches star.ts.
Okay.
And we also need to add a flag. So you go space -- out dir, and that's out with a capital D for dir, dir. And we're going to specify that as dist. So I can't remember if it's equal. Yeah, so just space and then dist, dist. So what this means is, and before we continue, so it's going to take all the files in your source, and then it's going to transpile them, and it's going to output them into a folder called dist, right?
Okay.
So just give that a run. And
It hated it. Root file.
file not found. Now, because you're using Windows, I hope that it's not like a problem. I mean, we could just, how about just instead of using the star, let's just use index. So replace index replace star with index. And for the future, you can go arrow up to just get the whole command again.
Right.
Without having to type it. Just press the up arrow if you want to get to the previously executed command. Yeah. And just replace star with index.
Just the star? Just index?
Yeah, just the star, yeah. Yeah, just try that. That worked. Right, so now you will see in the sidebar there's a new folder called dist. When I open that up.
Yeah, I see it.
Right, so now what we have is the transpiled version of your code into JavaScript format. Now you'll notice that like the name type annotation has been stripped away.
Right.
So it's now just normal, it's just named by itself. And you'll also notice that it's replaced the template literal format with like a string.concat, and everything else is pretty much the same. So what's happened here is, I think with newer versions of JavaScript, the template literal format is actually known and valid. But because we haven't created a tsconfig yet, it's going to use some defaults that use a very old version of JavaScript.
Okay.
So what I want to do is, in your sidebar, can you rename index.js and add like ES5 at the end of it, or index.es5? Yeah. So save that, and what we're going to do is we're going to now add a tsconfig, and we're going to set some options, and then we're going to compare the difference between the two formats. Okay. So what I like to do, there's a package called, I think it's called tsconfig. Oh, let me just bring it up. There is a collection of like default tsconfigs, or like base configs. Let me just get that up. Oh, someone followed me. Falafel Tree, thanks for the follow. Let me just quickly go to a folder that's 1 second. Yeah, so there's a package called tsconfig. Just before we continue, what Node version are you using?
Can I do, I think the latest one. I don't know how to do it. How do you say Node version?
Just version, dash version.
Dash version. There you go.
16. So what we'll do is, and I want to also kind of just show this package to you. So it's called tsconfig bases. Right. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to share this with the rest of the chat as well. So there's this repository for it's called tsconfig bases, and they offer like a bunch of sensible defaults for working with TypeScript, which is what I use these in my projects as like a way. So with tsconfig, because it's a configuration file, it also has a parameter in it called extends. So you're able to extend an other configuration and add more stuff on top of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Mpn Install. And are you looking at that as well at the moment, Rufio?
Yeah.
So you want to scroll down to node 16, and I want you to install tsconfig/node 16. And yeah.
With this.
See if you can.
Okay. Just the 16, not the strictest stuff.
Pardon?
So it has node 16 plus ESM plus strictest, and then also node 16 plus strictest, and then node 16.
It's just the. Oh, actually, there's a strictest one. Let's have a look at that one. I haven't noticed that one before. Let me just give me a sec. I want to have a look at it. Bases, node 16 strictest. Oh yeah, this is good. Yeah, we'll use the strictest one.
Strictest. Welcome back, 100 devs. Hope your Discord thingamajigger was good. We're learning TypeScript from scratch.
All right, yeah. So this is what we're looking at here. So yeah, once you install strictest, node 16 strictest, we can continue.
Okay.
Cool. So if you look in your package.json, you'll see that the new package has been included.
So what is this thing?
So this is a package that contains a tsconfig JSON, and we're able to reference that as in our own tsconfig as like a starting point, right? So it's almost like a template that we can import into our own configuration to build off on.
Okay.
So most TypeScript projects will have a tsconfig.json file in the root. So do you want to add a new tsconfig JSON file in your project?
So why didn't it already add if we added the other dependency?
So tsconfig isn't actually where do you think it was supposed to be added with that understanding?
I mean, just where we basically added it, but I thought it would, once we added the node 16 strictest thing, it would have just made the file, I guess. I don't know.
Right. So it wouldn't have made any files because you're just installing packages, right?
Okay.
My mic muted. Hello? Test. No, my mic's fine.
I can hear you. Or my mic is muted?
Oh, hold on. This whole time on my stream, you've been not coming through on desktop audio. That's right.
No.
No, my VOD is ruined.
We have to start all over again.
Yeah, that's it. We're always gonna have to. Even then, like, oh god, how embarrassing. Oh well, whatever.
It
It's a write-off.
happens.
Rufio's anyway. I'm just literally steering the ship. Rufio's got the main stream going on there. All right. So yeah, when you're installing packages, they don't necessarily do anything.
They just give you functionality. Is that what's up?
Yeah. So we're going to be they contain code, and then we can call that code, but they don't necessarily make any files by default.
Okay.
Right. So that's why we didn't get our own tsconfig added for us. Just because, right? We still have to make it ourselves. So if we go back to the Node 16 strictest, you'll see that after you install it, there is an instruction to add a certain line of code to that file you just created.
Oh, in here.
Yeah.
Oh yes, this extends.
So you want to copy that extends, and you'll put it in your new config file. So you need to wrap this in opening and closing brackets to make it valid JSON. No, like curly brackets.
Why is that?
That's just so it's pretty much you're defining an object in JSON format. So an object in JSON format just has those brackets, very much like a JavaScript object has those brackets.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. If you use the square brackets, you'd actually be defining an array.
Right.
Which is also valid JSON. It's just for this purposes, TypeScript wants a object instead.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you've got an object that extends the tsconfig and all that kind of stuff. So that's saved. What's the error that it's giving you?
It says it cannot write file because it would overwrite the input file.
Okay. So this error is being caused because at the moment, your TypeScript configuration file is looking at all source files in the project, which includes your dist folder, right?
Okay.
So because this default config writes to the dist folder, that would mean that if we ran it as it is now, it's complaining that a file that it's using to read will also be overwritten because it exists in the dist folder. Right?
Okay.
So we need to tell it to only look at the source folder.
So how
do we do that? If you go, I'm going to try and let you see if you can figure this out. So try and Google like tsconfig options and try to see how you can specify what to include in your folder.
Wait, tsconfig options like in the GitHub thing that you sent?
Not quite.
No.
There's actually a TypeScript lang documentation, which I will paste here as well. So TypeScript lang, try and find the docs and try to find the tsconfig reference tab. And in there, you'll be able to specify an include attribute, which will kind of tell you what to include in the file. See if you can figure it out. Hey, Dan can code. Have a great stream. Just dropping by. Nice. Good to see you.
Got the extend.
Whoa, a lot of stuff has happened in this chat. Evil Peter
is back. Wait a second.
Yay.
Oh. Ooh. Includes
Can you talk me through what you're looking at, what you're exploring?
So I found the include thing up on here, and it is saying in curly brackets and do like include and then in an array whatever files I guess it is that you want. I'm just not sure how it would mesh with the extends unless it's just another like thing within here.
Try it out.
The includer includes.
How nice are those type hints? It even gives you the right type. Look, you don't even have to guess what type it is. It just says, oh yeah, you got to put some array in here.
But we are trying to get just the source. But I couldn't just say source, looks like. No, I couldn't just say source.
What, look, is there an error that it's giving you?
It's just like, yeah. Unterminated regular expression literal.
This is a misleading error, but you're looking to have this as a string.
Oh, how did you know that though?
Experience.
Nice.
I've seen a lot of these errors in my time.
But it doesn't like it.
Yeah, I know, right, Dan? Don't even have to specify the extends parameter. How crazy is that? So why is this still an error?
I don't know. It's being funky.
The key distinction here is that this is a JSON file, not a JavaScript file. JSON doesn't know what a literal is. So you actually just have to use a normal string.
I did that, but it didn't like that either.
JSON's picky. You need to have it as a double quotes.
Oh my god.
That's the valid way.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's wild.
You might also want to specify a pattern. So this source you might want to add as well /. I mean, maybe you don't have to do that. You know what? Let's just leave it as is. Maybe you can just keep it simple. So you've got extends. So you've got all this base config that you don't have to set up. It's all good. You've got an include, and now you'll notice that the error that we had before with the whole it overwrites and output, all that kind of stuff, that's gone away now because we've told TypeScript to only look in the source folder and only output into the dist folder according to the defaults.
So it only looks at the source folder. It only looks at the source folder for the TypeScript files.
That's right. Because without it, it would look at the whole project. And it would find those other JavaScript files in the dist folder as well. But we want to ignore those files.
Okay.
Yeah. So now that we've got a TS config, let's run TSC again. But this time, we don't actually have to specify any parameters because TSC will now look at the config file. So we can just run TSC as is.
It loved it. Wait.
So now look at the dist folder. Give it a refresh. Oh, it seems to have put it
in the source folder.
Okay. We need to just we got to fix that up a bit. But yeah, let's just delete this and fix this up. But so delete this JS folder.
The folder, the file.
The file, sorry, the file. So go back to your config file. Are you already in it? Now we want to add some options. So I need you to add an option to specify the out directory, the out dir. See if you can add that yourself. I'll answer some questions. She's looking for this. Can you tell the diff between TypeScript's type and interface? Nowadays, the line gets blurrier. Yeah, mate, Bloodstrive, we'll definitely get into the differentiation between the two. I will definitely talk about that. The one true way, you know what got me lately, undefined is not valid JSON. That's right, it only supports nulls. A lot of APIs convert undefined to null for serialization, yeah. Or you could just leave the property out. You could just exclude the property and just let JavaScript have those undefined values. Because if it's not in there, it'll be undefined implicitly. So you don't have to convert it to null.
Oh, so we're just, so out dir just specifies the directory, right?
Yeah, so we have to, in the TS config, you need to add an option.
Like that.
And that option, yeah, compiler options out dir dist. Yeah, so if only, try going Control-Shift-P and try to find that, sorry, maybe not P. Maybe is it Control-Shift-P? I can't remember. One of them, yeah, that one. And just try to do format. Right format, see if it, format document. There you go, Alt-Shift-F. I just can't bear to, yeah, go prettier. Oh,
Wait,
hold
it's
on,
okay.
try
I know
that
how to
again.
do it. It's okay, baby.
Yeah, do prettier.
There we
Much
go.
better. Thank God. I was like, God, I can't deal with this anymore. It's just brutal. All right, so let's try running TSC again. Rascal 2. Hey, it's been going well. Thank you. Stick around and we'll explore some more stuff. So yeah, out dir has now, so now the file is now appropriately put into the dist folder. So let's compare the two. Do you want to open both files side by side and we'll see the difference?
Yeah. Okay.
They're the same file. All right, so yeah, one of them. So notice how in the most recent one, the index.js one, notice that it's kept the template literal syntax in there.
Oh.
It's kept it as is rather than convert it to a .concat.
Okay.
So that's because ES5 didn't have template literals when it existed, right? So we actually, in the TS config, the configuration we've extended from, it specified an option as to like what is the target version of JavaScript you want to support. So by default, it supports the lowest one, which doesn't have all these fancy features.
Frank.
But with the config that we've included, it tells it to use a more recent version, which does have things like literals, etc.
So like ES5 versus ES6.
Yeah. So with new language features, the compilation step in TS code changes the output slightly, right? So it's important to know like that's what TSC does. It takes TypeScript, which has like all of the latest and greatest TypeScript features in it, and then through a process of transpilation, it spits out a different version of JavaScript based on whatever target is specified. So we're using a really recent version of TypeScript with a really recent version of JavaScript versus the default version, which is quite older. It doesn't have all the features we want. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Born, my eyes are darting everywhere because Peter's on my screen over here, and I'm looking at this screen, but I'm also looking at the chat. So that's why. But why? So like, use strict. I never figured out what use strict is all about. So like, what's up with that? Why would it put it here in the ES6 one?
Right. So use strict, from what I remember, has it's kind of got to do with various behaviors of the TypeScript runtime. So one of those behaviors is the meaning of this. So if you go like, if you're doing object-based stuff, the this keyword has different meanings in different contexts. So use strict, I think, makes this null or undefined if you're not using it with an object or something like that. Like it's just some behavioral stuff, and use strict kind of is like an opt-in for more strict, and it kind of removes some unexpected behavior that cropped up in JavaScript over the years.
So when we did the strictest something, that's what that is. Like it brings in use strict.
Not quite. There is strictness in terms of how strict your typings are. So in TypeScript, they've got like a type system, which, because JavaScript is very dynamic, it allows you to be very flexible with your variable considerations, right? You can define different types and all that kind of stuff. So using the strict mode controls how strict TypeScript is with comparing types.
Okay.
Yeah, so like there are some cases where, like, you know, it might compare null and undefined differently in a non-strict setting, but in strict TypeScript they are definitely different things. So it's just that kind of stuff. So use strict in this context controls behavior in JavaScript, and strict in TypeScript's config configures type comparison behavior.
Okay.
Right, the two different worlds, two different kind of, there's strictness options in two different worlds, and we've made everything as strict as possible.
Okay.
Because when it's the most strict, it tends to be the most correct, or as correct as we can get it.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me just respond to some stuff here. My example, getting stuff out of a database with get name of key. If the data's not present, come back undefined. Then the API sent client showing up as null. Shouldn't allow. Yeah, man. Particularly if you're working with GraphQL stuff, that shit gets really complicated, because it's like, you know, what if you got properties that are non-nullable, but you optionally request them from the server, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's a tough balance when you're working with GraphQL, because some properties, even though, yeah, they're supposed to be something, you can not request them and they cannot be there. TS strict mode is way more strict than use strict. Not the same thing. Yeah, they live in different worlds. Foo and bar are common traditional placeholder names. That's right. Using a lot of programming texts. Yeah.
Yassine wants to know if in strict is there a semicolon?
What do you mean? Sorry, use strict ends
Like,
with a semicolon. Who
so
asked that
I
question?
think
I can't-
Yassine, Yassine, ST1. It's above when Dan said TS strict
in
mode.
strict is there a semicolon?
So like, yeah.
Okay, well, semicolons aren't necessarily related to the strictness that in this use. Like, so use strict isn't really about including semicolons, because semicolons are there to kind of to split statements in JavaScript. It is possible to write JavaScript without semicolons, because there are often a lot of keywords that kind of end up being natural divisions between statements. However, if you don't include semicolons, there is actually one case where if you don't include a semicolon, it does end up looking a little bit like, you can, like, if you do this, if you do an anonymous function and an immediate call, if you have an array later on, or if you have this, okay, see ya. If you've got something like this, and then on the next line you do something like that, like if you do just a bunch of like anonymous calls and stuff, because there's no semicolons, like what actually might happen is the result of this might be called, like the result of this may be attempted to be called as a function like this, because this is like, you know, these brackets, if not separated by a semicolon, becomes a function invocation. So that's why it's kind of useful to have semicolons, just so you can avoid unintended invocations of things above and below it, particularly with like brackets, square brackets, like object definitions. So it is possible to do JavaScript without it, but that strictness setting is not relating to enforcing or denying semicolons.
What is sorry.
Yeah, go on.
What's a function invocation?
Pretty much when you call a function. So this foo, this is an invocation, right? You're invoking foo with these parameters. That's just what it means. A function call, invocation,
so
like that kind of stuff.
When you have those two, like one above and one below, you're saying that the second one was calling the first one.
The second one, yeah, was calling it because it had like brackets, right? So it took the result of the line above it and then thought, oh, cool, I'm just going to call it. But if you had that semicolon in there, it would terminate that statement as is. So then the next line below it would, you know, function as its own kind of, like the brackets would go from a function call to parentheses like you'd have it in math, like you'd wrap like two operations, like the brackets would just evaluate whatever's inside it rather than using those parameters as a call.
Okay.
It's just, how the language works. There's a lot of things going on here. The fuck is LSP, Language Server Protocol? That's right. You run language servers, and then they can help inform autocompletes and all that kind of stuff.
Hey HackerX, welcome to our stream. We're streaming with Peter here, and we're learning about TypeScript. We've rated HackerX 2 times.
And Jose 19.
Hi, hello. Thanks for follows, everyone.
And Dan can code. I hope my explanation was adequate for example of why semicolons are necessary. Cool. All right. So we've installed TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
We've configured TypeScript with a set of defaults.
Okay.
And those defaults we've extended upon those defaults using our own tsconfig file.
Right.
And then we've added, we've taken these defaults from another package we've installed. We've told our tsconfig to point at a certain folder, which is our source folder. And we've told it to output our files to an output folder.
The dist.
So do you want to, maybe close a couple of these tabs, and we'll just kind of go back to something simpler. Like go back to your, close everything but your index.ts file.
Okay.
Right. So now, do you want to try, now that we've, compiled our TypeScript code into JavaScript code, do you want to now try using Node to run the output of our compilation?
Wait, didn't we do that? Isn't that what this is? Or no?
Yeah, so that step was actually doing the compilation step. So now we actually want to run the code with Node.
So running the code doesn't necessarily...
Yeah, so compiling doesn't mean execute the code. It just means transform the code from one format to another.
Wait, so when you're saying run the Node code, are you saying using Node or the TSC?
I'm saying run with Node. So when I say compile, I'm referring to TSC because that's the compiler.
Okay.
And when I say run Node, it's we're running using Node to now give it valid JavaScript.
And we're running the Node index.ts or JS? Because you said the .ts wouldn't work, right?
Try with TS, and then try with the output of our JS. So they're actually in folders. So you got to go source index.js or TS. No, don't have to CD. Go back one.
Okay. But.
So try running Node. So Node source. So Node source / index. Yeah.
I get you.
So you'll get an error because you've kind of got that weird symbol that it wasn't expecting, right?
Right.
So now, because we've run TSC, it's taken the TypeScript file and made it into a JavaScript file. So it's stripped out all the TypeScript stuff and it's, put it in the right format. So I need you to run the output index.js file.
Oh, that's not in the source. So
hey,
dist.
Good. I was wondering if you'd pick that up before you ran it.
Hello 7. Oh, hello 7.
Hey, it looks like Jim FYYC is also following along and trying the foo function in TS. That's very cool. I like you being ignored. I mean, you're not really saying much, mate. You must have been shadow banned. Lark, sure you're right. React Native devs. We're not doing React Native, we're doing TypeScript, but feel free to follow along. If you're doing React Native, you're probably going to need some TypeScript as well to have a better, a more sturdy and robust code base. Yeah, Dan can code. Nice catch. You got it. You switched out that. There we go. There we go.
I'm a god. Thank you.
That's it. So yeah, now, yeah. Do you want to give a quick recap of where we've started and where we've gotten up to?
Yes. Do you want to answer Yashin's question? I just barely put it beforehand.
Okay, really quick. I have a question. Can we do this in Webpack converting? Yes. So this process, there is a lot of plugins to make this more automatic. Webpack does have tons of, like, you can have Webpack, and you can use, so Webpack by itself doesn't handle the transpilation compilation step, but it does have plugins for Babel. It does have plugins for ESBuild, all of these, and also plugins for, it's got plugins that allow you to take input files based on a certain match of a file type, would then transpile it accordingly to these plugins. So it's all about plugins. Yeah, Webpack has plugins, and those plugins you can configure to convert TypeScript into thing, as well as, that's right, Damn Ink Art. There is a package called Vit, or Vite, or however you pronounce it. And that is also like a toolkit that has a lot of built-in defaults that handles TypeScript and all that kind of web dev stuff. So that's very, very useful. I also use Vite when I can. It's very good. It also supports hot reloading and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so TSC, yeah, Dan can code. TSC converts TS to JS, then Webpack bundles it, but you can include TypeScript stuff into Webpack to not have to do multiple steps. Because really, when you're running these kind of projects, you want to have it like one command that handles all of the steps automatically, rather than, go from, okay, I will run TSC to convert it to this, then I will run Webpack to convert it to this. It just makes the whole experience really annoying. Whereas just running Webpack or running Vit or running any sort of one single entry point that handles all of the build steps for you. Which is why this is why the JavaScript ecosystem is so, I guess, overwhelming for new developers, because there's so many tools and so many ways to do the same thing, and so many plugins that can be rearranged in different formats. I think, Kozarin, you mean Dino and Fresh, but yeah, Dino has TypeScript baked in. All that kind of stuff. So Next.js is also got a bunch of things in there too. But yeah, so with that all said, oh geez, yeah, TRPC is really cool as well. It's nice to not have to worry about double definitions of interfaces and stuff like that. Cool. Let's switch over to Rufio. Rufio, from where we started to where we are now, can you talk us through what steps we've done to get to this point and what you've learned along the way?
Yes. Everyone who's following me, thank you. Also follow Peter. They are streaming at the same time right now, just so you know. So first of all, we downloaded TypeScript, and I think we just did npm like install TypeScript, right? Like, or TSC. No, TypeScript. Writing TypeScript out, I think. And then we made a package.json, and within the package.json, that's where we have our TypeScript. We also did npm install this tsconfig file to help like determine the behavior of like TypeScript, I think, right? Right?
Right.
The tsconfig just determines the behavior of TypeScript, right?
Say that again.
The tsconfig file, or like the npm package, just determines like the behavior of TypeScript, right?
So the package JSON file contains all of the dependencies for your project.
Right.
The the TS config file is specifying the behavior of TypeScript.
Okay.
Yeah, the TypeScript package contains the TypeScript compiler, and the compiler is configured by our config file, which is tsconfig. Yeah.
So we made a tsconfig file, and then we further determined the behavior by bringing in this little config stuff that we found online, this Node 16 thing. but it wasn't going to the right, it wasn't looking at TypeScript files in the right place. It was looking at everything, and it was getting mixed up because it would have been overriding the file it was supposed to read, and it didn't like that, I think. So we just specified what we wanted it to look at to just be the source folder. And then we said, and then whenever you compile like the TypeScript files, you're going to compile them into the dist folder.
Yeah.
Then we have our TypeScript file in our source folder, and the big distinguishing difference between it and JavaScript so far is defining the types, which should help you like prevent, what's it called, errors before they become big and like in production and further down the line, by like just being more specific.
Yeah.
But if you were to run this file, it would be like, you have a colon, I don't get what that means, because like JavaScript can't read that. So once it compiles, when you write TSC, I think we just write TSC to do that.
Yeah, that's right.
It makes this, and this is like the JavaScript version of this index.ts. And the big difference is it brings in this use strict, and it doesn't put like the type.
Yeah. It strips the types out of it.
But so if that's the case, and we want TypeScript to make the types, if the type doesn't even come back over here, what's the use in having TypeScript if it's just going to read the JavaScript in the end?
So the reason for having TypeScript is those TypeScript source files that we work with, those are the ones that have those type annotations, and those type annotations prevent us from making those mistakes, right? Because TypeScript is kind of based on JavaScript, JavaScript doesn't have like strong types. It doesn't actually, you can write scripts without having to lock in the types.
Right.
Because everything is dynamic, TypeScript is just there to make sure that things connect in the right way. Like you're calling name with a string, but JavaScript doesn't actually care what you call it with. You could call it with a number in runtime. It doesn't know, but this is for catching errors where, you're actually putting together the application and the types are mismatched.
So basically it just like, when it's in like TypeScript form, it just like assures like the specific types, and then when it transfers it over to JavaScript, it just like, it doesn't actually write the types, and it just makes sure like the code is like according to what the types would be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's kind of like a layer that detects, like Dan Ken Code says, it detects errors to prevent you from compiling to JavaScript, so you can fix those errors to make JavaScript that will execute in a way that you expect it to execute. Yeah, they're just, because TypeScript really just it's just really like a layer of helpers. It's annotations. They're just like, they're not actually like runtime things. They're just there as little embellishments on your code to help you write better code. It doesn't influence behavior of the JavaScript. It just helps you make sure that you don't run things in an unexpected way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, once we've, like, in this index.js file, there's nothing stopping us from changing this 7 string into just a normal 7, right? Do you want to change that 7 and do you want to change the string into just a normal 7?
I'm just trying to
right, now try running the same thing. See, it'll still work, right? But there is a potential where, this function may be really expecting methods on a string. Like maybe it's calling 2 uppercase. So, and then it kind of crashes, right? So do you want to try doing that? So let's go to index.ts. And in the name method, I want you to convert that name to an uppercase format.
Okay. I don't know if I can do this within here. Can I? Maybe.
Yeah. So now transpile that. Maybe make 7 into like a name like Peter or Rufio. Right. All right.
And I can
So TSC, yep.
And then it should. There we go.
Yep. Now run it. Right. Hello, Peter Rufio. So now replace Peter or Rufio with 7.
7 string or just 7?
7 number. Now give it a run. Ba-boom. See? So this is, so like, it's still possible to execute this stuff, but when we're developing the functions, we need to make sure that we're calling it correctly. Like if you go back to the TS file and switch it out to a 7, you'll get an error saying, hold on a second, we're expecting a string here. If you forcefully give it a 7, things are going to break. Like 2 uppercase doesn't exist on name, right?
So if we did it in TypeScript where we tried to put in 7,
Here you go.
then it
So
will
it's got an
say,
error. Like, whoa, we need a string, right? And if you try running TSC, you'll get an error in TSC as well. Don't worry, chat. We'll come back to the chat. So yeah, argument of type number is not assignable. So this is like kind of, hold on a second, like, yo, you're making a big mistake here. And this is kind of like what infrastructure guy says. TypeScript saves developers from themselves, so they write type-safe code. It's not for browsers. Exactly right. It's a tool for developers to write better JavaScript.
okay.
Now check this out, right? Now I'm just going to step into a different category. We'll come back to this later. It's kind of advanced, but if you, next to 7, if you write as unknown, hover over that, unknown's not assignable to string, and now go as string. Right?
Beautiful.
So everybody, it is possible to trick TypeScript, right? You can forcefully change things to make it work, but you have to know what you're doing, because otherwise this is how you can introduce runtime errors into your code. Like TypeScript, if you now run TSC, you won't get an error anymore.
It loves it.
Right? Now check out the output, right? Whoa, this is now, like, if you run this, you'll get the same thing, right? Boom. So what those as keywords do is pretty much just like a developer assertion. It's for like advanced use cases. So I wouldn't like, but this is kind of, it's not like it's a bulletproof method. TypeScript can still be tricked into creating incorrect code, right? If you tell TypeScript that this unknown thing is guaranteed to be something, like imagine if you're calling an API and you're saying, I don't like, because TypeScript doesn't know what's coming from the internet, right? If you receive some JSON file from the internet and you tell it that this unknown thing is indeed a string, this is kind of like, there's no guarantee for external stuff. So that's why you still need to validate it. But for like if you're writing all of these functions in like a closed system with no inputs or outputs, you're kind of it's kind of as close to guaranteed correctness for making sure that all your functions are called in the right way. So let's get rid of these unknown as string stuff, because we're hardly ever going to need to force TypeScript to believe that a number is indeed a string. But yeah, so this is kind of like, TypeScript is just a tool. It helps inform you, and it kind of helps. It's a tool. It's just a tool that helps you write more robust JavaScript. It's not 100% foolproof, and there are still patterns that you need to use to ensure that external data sources are indeed what you think that they are. Let me look through some questions and just make sure that we haven't missed anything. Kind of like IntelliSense. IntelliSense Floyd Wall is pretty much like, IntelliSense is a tool of the IDE, and it uses an LSP such as TS server, TypeScript server, to inform things like the the autocomplete stuff. So IntelliSense has those autocomplete functions, and TypeScript is able to inform those things much better. It helps avoid unforeseen errors that arrive from vanilla JavaScript. Yeah, pretty much. Like if you pass a string where you're expecting a number, etc., like it's all like that. Sounds like a must learn. Yes, Jason, it definitely is a must learn. I've seen all the job postings I've seen pretty much are now becoming more TypeScripty based, just because it's such a useful tool for web development. Because you avoid so many errors. Like, I don't know if you guys have, over your years of browsing the internet, you must have come along like a string that says, hello, object, and it's like it's received an object where it's supposed to be receiving a string, and that's just how it formats like an object if you're trying to make it into a string. So that there is like in production, you've come across a type error where they were expecting a name string, but they were given an object that might contain a name or something. So like if they had TypeScript, they'd probably be able to catch that error. So you should never do this. It's never too strong. There are cases where you want to ensure that TypeScript, yeah, that's okay. So some instances are like, oh boy, like they're very advanced cases where you'd need to do something like that. Cool, because it's dynamic language, it has to guess sometimes. Yeah, it's a wild language. A front ender will definitely have to touch some of the stuff, because a front end may also need to receive information from a back end, and a back end might need to receive information from a front end. So you need interfaces, and you need ways to validate stuff. And there are some libraries that combine the TypeScript stuff with the validation stuff together. A very good library is called Zod, which we can touch on later, because it kind of takes an unknown input and then produces a validated output, but it also gives you TypeScript annotations, which is also very, very useful. All right.
What are DTOs? We've talking about DTOs up in the chat.
Dan can code data transfer object. DTO. Yeah. They're all connected, must do validation on both sides. Yeah, I mean, if you're creating a closed system, like where you control both the front end and the back end, that's kind of where libraries like trpc comes into effect, because they pretty much define some types on the server, and then the front end uses those types to inform that everything is correct. So it kind of skips those validation steps under the assumption that everything is correct. But if it's like some other, like if you're calling some external API and you're not really sure, you would need to make sure that everything's okay then. Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here. It's a lot, but I mean, at the same time though, we're just taking the steps to get better and better slowly at it.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, let's now that we've kind of got we now understand, how TypeScript is installed, how we would use TypeScript practically to transform TypeScript code into JavaScript code, and we're also able to run it. What I'm going to also show you is another tool called TS Node. And this is one of many packages and tools that help you skip that explicit TSC step, right? So rather than having to run TSC and then run Node, we can just skip that and run TS Node. So what I would like you to do is install a new package.
Okay.
I want you to install a dev dependency for ts-node.
It's just one
double dash
okay.
dev, yeah.
Apparently, --dev is deprecated, Rude.
Oh, is it? I don't know that. I don't use Node Mpn. It did install though. You want to check your package JSON to make sure that everything is in order.
essentially there.
Maybe you needed to do capital D. So you can literally just move that from one of them to the other. Like
Right
just
up here.
yeah, just make sure you include that. Yeah, cool. And just you can leave that or you can delete it. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. Oh, save dev. Damn ink art. So yeah, you had to include save -dev.
Or include is what it says in
Yeah.
my Warren thing.
I use yarn, so for me it's just yarn add package --dev or -D. Anyway, so now we've got TS node. So you had to run TSC, then you had to run node dist index.js. So now try running ts-node. No, just try running ts node.
Just
with the dash in the middle, with the dash. And then point it to source. Sorry. No, you got to point it to a file. Source index.ts. Yeah, you got it. Oh, it's not a. You might have to run it through npn. So maybe go npn run ts node, I think. Source index. What's going on? Maybe we'll just define our own script to do it for us. Make a new script and just call it start.
Start.
And we'll just call ts node with the index.ts file.
So I would just write like this.
Yeah. Source index, nice. And then give it a run. Run mpn run start or start or fucking whatever it is. I think start works.
He loved it, maybe.
Yay!
I loved it.
There you go. So ts node pretty much adds like its own automated build step where it takes the input file, transpiles it on the fly, and then runs it immediately. And they'll actually, if you delete your dist folder, just full on, yeah, bang. Now try running it again, and you'll notice that it doesn't actually create, I don't think it creates the dist folder. It just runs it from memory. There you go. That's it, done. So
we don't need a dist folder, or we do need a dist folder?
The dist folder, if we're building it, if we're just building it without, and then running it manually through Node, but TS Node is like an automation step between like taking the source file, transpiling, and running all in one command.
So, what if we were doing this, like if we're pushing this to production? All it has over here is just TypeScript, right?
Yeah.
So would, even with it in production with like TS Node, would it like change that to JavaScript?
In production, it really just comes down to how, like, from what I understand, I don't think necessarily it would make that much of a performance impact apart from just the initial step of rebuilding all your TypeScript into JavaScript. Guys in the chat, I will get there in a moment. Goddamn. So yeah, you could just build it, make a dist folder and then run it from the dist, or you could run it from TS Node. The only advantage of building it once and then running it multiple times is that you don't have to build it every single time you want to run it, which may be faster.
And
so,
one more question. So we have in our this one. Now that we don't have dist, do we need this compiler options?
It depends if we want to build it and then run it from the build directory in a more fast way. Like, as you can tell, it probably was a lot faster to run it. Like the slowest part of this step is the TypeScript compilation part. So if you want to do repeated runs without changing the code, then building it and then running the build would be faster than TS Node every single time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we would.
So for now, for now we could just leave it. Like, yeah. The thing is, if you accidentally run TSC, then your whole source directory will be filled up with new JavaScript files, which is really annoying.
If we do TS Node now, or like right now?
Like if we were to remove compiler options and then run
Oh,
TSC, our source folder would be filled with JavaScript files next to the TS files.
okay.
Let me just respond to some of these
Yeah.
things. I've been a fan of npx TS node instead of calling it a dev dependency. Any reason that might cause problems? The only problem might be if you want to make sure that the TS node version is the same across teams, because when you run npx, it will, if it isn't installed already, it'll install it and then run it. So if there's a version mismatch, then the tooling might be different for the team. So that's why you probably want to add it as a dev dependency. npx is useful for like starting a new project, where you just run it as a one-off and it just runs like the latest version or whatever's installed on your system. So npx TS node may differ behaviorally if the version of TS node changes. There's some Yarn stuff. I'm currently on Yarn 1, because Yarn 2 is like a totally different, like it's like a plug and play infrastructure, and I'm yet to look at that properly. Lark, same reason as above. If you use npx, you have to make sure that you're kind of solo deving, or you want to make sure you add as a dev dependency so you get consistent build behaviors. What if I delete the plate from cache? Yeah, cache it. Minor issues with extra deps need to be installed when some things production. Yeah, so infrastructure guy, preferred dist folder on production since the dependency is just Node, so it'll be more secure and compact. I don't know how much of a security difference it'll make, but it'll definitely be more compact. And I suppose as well, like, I guess that's with compactness. You know how we have like a dev dependencies part and a normal dependencies part in the package JSON?
Wait, say that one more time.
So you know how we have in the package JSON dev dependencies and normal dependencies?
Right.
So to make it more compact, because everything in the dev dependencies there is required for building the source code, it's not actually used by the runtime, right? We're never importing anything from dev dependencies.
Okay.
So this is useful in production because if we build if we build our source code into like a dist folder, and then we, after that build step, strip away, like run or like install node modules, but without the dev dependencies, the thing would be a lot smaller because it doesn't have to install all of the dev tools. It just installs what you actually use at runtime, which would make the size significantly smaller. So yeah, and there is a way to run npn install without the dev dependencies. It just like ignores them all. So that would be the main difference. Thanks for the shout out, RoboDom. So yeah, pretty much for production use, it probably is best to run a TSC step to get a built version of the JavaScript and then run it directly from there, because that allows you to strip away all the dev dependencies and just use the normal one. How's that sound?
It sounds good. I just read Dan Inkart's latest like thing in the chat, and like I don't understand any of those words. Some libraries like Lodash can be tree shaking. What is tree shaking?
Okay, tree shaking is a process of removing code that isn't being used. It's typically used in the context of web applications, like if you're bundling up stuff for sending to the browser, right? If you make a React app, and then you want to send that package to the internet, and like bundle it up and then use it. So tree shakeability is where you've got a library where a lot of the kind of modules in that library are written in a way where when you're bundling it up, you can exclude stuff that's never used, which makes the bundle smaller. So tree shakeability is all about being able to determine what is not used and then excluding that from the result.
Why wouldn't you just call it like pruning? You know what I'm saying?
Tree shaking, pruning, tree pruning, like it's kind of all synonymous.
Oh wait, so people actually do use pruning or tree pruning?
I mean, like they effectively mean the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to test the. Do you know what a tree is? It's a matter of CI/CD. When we build the code to deploy to production, does the build file also contain all the dependency in package.json? That's a complicated one, right, Shah? Because there's really kind of two ways you could go about it, depending on like what you want to actually ship. If you want to make it so that the process is like, for example, a Docker container, this is going a bit off topic, right? But if you wanted to say build, I'm going to make a Docker container that contained like the built JavaScript plus the node modules required for runtime, then you could do it that way and just ship off what could be potentially quite a big node modules file. However, if you wanted to keep the build artifact nice and small, you could do what you do similar with bundling, where you bundle the whole server into like a small file, which could also take advantage of tree shaking, which would eventually make the output artifact really nice and small. Is there anything you don't know? Stop. It's just I've just been doing this for ages. I've been literally deep in the stuff. So yeah, like it is optional. Like you could potentially not even need a package JSON at the end of the day if it was just take your server, bundle all your dependencies as needed into a single JS file, and then just ship it like node and your file, and everything is there. And then that would be it. So you could do that, which, when you think about it, would actually be a lot smaller potentially, because you don't have any unnecessary like non-tree shaken dependencies. Hello again, where are we? I think by default, when you publish a package, it doesn't include the node modules. That's right. It doesn't include node modules when you package it. It just everything is references. All the dependencies are referenced in the package JSON. So when you install it, you install the dependencies. That's right. Cool. I think let's move on to something else.
I just made you name a command.
Oh, wow.
Because I keep saying the same thing over and over again, so.
Thanks. All right, cool. Let's jump back into the code. Let's do something more exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of questions. Yeah, node modules, that's a lot. Node modules gets quite big.
A dark feeder command? What would that look like?
Dark Peter's asking Rufio too many interview-related JavaScript questions. All right, so let's jump back into the index.ts file.
Okay.
What I want to show you next is like we'll put this below all this stuff. We'll keep the code as is. So I need you to define a. Hey, thanks for the follow. I have seen. So under all this, I want you to define a variable that has a number in it. You can call it whatever you want. Just make it a number. Robodom,
like that?
all the companies want TS developers, from my experience. So now hover over num. So without specifying the type, Typescript is able to infer what the type of that variable is. So inference is having it figure it out without you having to explicitly tell it.
Okay.
Now, it is also possible to explicitly make number a number. So can you add a type annotation to number to explicitly make it a number? Yeah. So if you wanted to be really, really pragmatic with, I mean, it's not necessary, but it is more typing. But you can force number to be written as that. So if you hover over it, over number, it's definitely a number. Now try making number into a string. So change the annotation to string.
Hates it.
Hey, thanks for the follow, infrastructure guy. So now we've got a type error where we're trying to set that value. We're saying this value, this variable has to be this type. So this is useful if because we're giving it a 7 by itself.
Mm-hmm.
like that's not going to change at runtime. Like it's almost like that is statically always going to be a 7. But what if we change that? So now move foo to be where 7 is.
Like calling this like that? Or
Yeah.
no?
So now, and then change the console log to be a return statement. Right. So now hover over foo. Yeah, so notice how now the type annotation, now that we've returned something, notice that the annotation now has a result type at the end of it. So
Okay.
it's gone foo, takes an argument name of string, and it also has a return type of string.
Okay.
So now comment return.
Like the
So
whole
comment
line or
the
just
whole line,
return?
yeah, comment the whole line. Now check out the return. Now check out the type of foo. So hover over foo and see what. So now it's void, right?
Void.
Void is synonymous with undefined,
Okay.
right? But void is pretty much there to say that no value has explicitly been returned. Like this function isn't expecting you to return anything, right?
Right.
Now, I want you to add an explicit annotation to the return type of foo.
Like that?
Not quite.
No.
Not quite. So we're defining the return type on the definition of the function, not the call of the function.
Oh. Like this.
Yeah. So now look at the error now. So what do you think this error means?
It's saying that you have to give it a value, like if it's a string or a number or something like that, it has to have a value, whereas void and any don't.
So try. So could you explain that again, please?
Yeah, so like a string or a number, they have to return a value. So like we don't have one right here. We're not.
A string
It's
has
not.
to return a value. Is that what you
That's
said?
what it's saying, yeah.
So it's saying a function that has a declared type
Right, so like
must return.
the
Yeah,
type of string has to have a value, right?
not quite.
No.
The return type of foo must return a type of string. Right? So foo must return a string, is what it's saying.
Okay.
And how do we fix this error?
I mean, would we uncomment this? Isn't that what we do? No.
Give it a go.
Oops, I didn't grab it all. It loves it.
Right. So what's happening now is TypeScript is able to infer that type literal that you got there, that hello string, is indeed a string. So it happily satisfies the function's requirement to return a string. Right?
Right.
Now let's make an if statement in this function and make it so that it returns the length of the name if the name is Peter.
Wait a second. If name.
Ooh, do a triple equals there.
I still don't know the difference.
I'll explain the difference in a moment.
What was I supposed to do? We're supposed to do name
Return
dot
the
length.
length of the name. Yeah. Let's look at the error. Oh no. Keep the
We
original
wanted
line.
that.
Yeah. Keep it all in there. Why did this happen?
Catch me outside. How about that?
Well, so this is making it a number when we do name dot length, and foo has to return a string. So this would make it's returning a number, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the error is. Or is there more to it than that?
No, that's it. So the property of length. Now, actually, what we'll do, backspace length, and then kind of get rid of length, and then press dot. So now look at that. Now scroll down the autocomplete with and try and hover over length. Like I might have to use your arrow keys to.
Oops. Wait a second. Let me try that again.
Mind. Try that again. But just navigate down with.
I didn't love it.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. So length. If you click on that and hover over length, it actually gives you the type of length.
Oh.
Which is a number. So kind of, and if you were to do like type of other stuff, like yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. So now try and just remedy this error. You can make any other behavior that just fixes this. I don't know what you might want to do. You could even rename Peter to be something else.
Can I do that?
Maybe, I mean, technically you could. Maybe a better method would be to go length.toString.
Why is that better?
Because it's like you're not creating a new object.
And doing string around it is?
Yeah, because you're creating like a string object with it's not quite a string, it's like a string object. It's a bit strange. How about if the input is Peter, make it go Dark Peter. Change my name to Dark Peter and then output hello.
Okay, wait a second. Change your name to Dark Peter.
Yeah.
Didn't know we were doing coding challenges.
And then I'll move on to another topic.
Dark.
So I should say hello, Dark Peter.
We want hello, Dark Peter? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, wait, we want that down here.
You can organize it however you want. Bloodstrive, you're right. So double equals does coercion, which isn't necessarily bad, but a lot of people get it wrong. A common substitution we use double equals for. I catch both undefined and null. Yeah.
We wouldn't want the second return, though, because it's doing the same thing, right?
If it's not Peter, like pretty much what we're doing is if the name is something different, yeah, the name of the function is foo. That's right. Yeah, test it out.
And now I just do npm start, right?
Yeah. However, there won't be any output though, because we don't actually have any console whatevers. So the program's running, but there's no output.
Okay, so should we return it or should we console log it?
No. We've already got, so we're actually calling the function already. So you might actually want to call the result of num. Like console log num.
Okay.
That's right. Console log is a void function. That's right. Console log doesn't return anything. Cool. There you go, Peter Rufio, and then change the input to just be Peter.
I'm excited.
Oy. Hey, nice. All right, cool.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, we've figured out, we've got different return statements that all have to return the expected return type, which is important. If you've got one return that returns a number, but everything else returns a string, then you might have a runtime error, which is what TypeScript protects us from.
So, like, when you're coding or you're making some sort of application, when do you know to, like, explicitly define things versus, like, implicitly have them be defined?
There's no steadfast rule, but it is better to be explicit.
Okay.
Particularly in the case of let num be string. So change the return type of foo to be number. So no, the return type of foo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. right? Now check out num. Num is now got an error, right? Because foo is now giving it a number. So if we had just let num be explicit, like let be num, like get rid of the colon string on num. Now num is going to be whatever it receives, right? So hover over num and see that it's now a number. Now change the signature back to string again in foo. No. So change foo back to returning a string. So now it's a string, right? It's just inferring whatever's given to it rather than saying like, hey, this thing has to be a string or this thing has to be a number, right? So without that explicit annotation, the program will just be like, cool, it's whatever we want, like whatever, take it and go. So particularly like if you have functions that return big objects, it's better to define like the interface of what's being returned rather than let the function return something rather than having it infer it. And what I mean by that, and I'll take over for a bit.
Okay.
Let me just answer a few questions. The name of the function, yeah, is the let num calling the function too? No, let num in this example is just a variable assignment, and foo is what's kind of what being called. So pretty much num is equal to the result of foo called with Peter. And then that result we can log as then in the next line. Let me just check up on this. Equal versus triple equal. We just said it was coercion, that's right. Do I have a video tutorial for beginners to TypeScript that you can recommend? Honestly, not so much a video tutorial, but I did find the TypeScript handbook is actually really good. If you start from the basics, like it's actually a really good guide. Even if you know JavaScript and even if you know TypeScript, it is worth having another read to see if there's anything you've missed. But this is like a really great. I posted them both. I used to prop open my door. Yeah, mate, you got to read some books, mate. So this is a really excellent resource. I would encourage everyone getting into TypeScript. It's actually a pretty decent guide to walk through, how this stuff works and what static type checking is and tooling and all that kind of stuff. And it talks about the TSC compiler and how to install TypeScript, all that kind of stuff. This the -G for a global install, I would actually be better off installing it for a local project. So you can kind of make sure you're using the same version as everybody else in your team. Now we got to read. Yeah, mate, you got to learn. Learning is being uncomfortable and then gradually becoming more comfortable when you learn more. Yeah, the official docs are terrific. Anything you need to know from memory are the concepts, not the specific APIs. Exactly right. Like as soon as you know how to click everything together, really like that's kind of what was interesting to see when I was doing Code Wars stuff. When you switch to a different language, really it's just, okay, I know the general mechanics of how the problem is solved, but the exact calls of what to, like how to move, how to make an array, that kind of stuff, like that's all just comes down to syntax. As long as you understand like the basic stuff. Rufio's sleepy now. No.
No, I'm listening.
But yeah, so the TypeScript docs are really terrific. I'd recommend going through that gradually. But yeah, let me walk through an example. I'm going to take over the code now. So let's say we have a function that's get user. And this function returns something that ought to be a user, right? We'll give it a parameter like a name, and it'll accept a string. And we want to return an object that has that name, right? It could be really, really simple, right? Or maybe we'll make it make user, right? I'm just gonna separate this. All right, so what we've got here is we're now got a function that returns a object. And Rufio, I want you to hover over make user and see what the return type is.
String, because it's getting it from the name above, right?
It's actually an object that has a property named name with string, and that type of name is a string, right?
Right, this is
So-
the destructuring, isn't it?
No.
No.
I mean, it's more like not so much destructuring, but like structuring. I mean, it's equivalent to making. It's equivalent to this.
Right.
So yeah, this function is returning an object that has a property that's called name, and that name has a type of string. So if we were to go lower and make user, and we give it a name, if we hover over user, you'll see that it takes on that structure.
Okay.
So if we wanted to destructure a name out of it, if you hover over name, you'll see that it's appropriately a string, right?
Right.
Now, let's change the type of name to be type of a number.
Oops. I thought I grabbed the whole thing. I didn't. Pranked.
So immediately we start catching some problems, right? Make user is now expecting a number. No, the make user argument is expecting a number.
Ah.
Right, so you've already got some. What does name do? Name is just an assignment. So like, if I wanted to, just really quickly, a question was, what does name this do? How are they different? So in this case, name is equal to whatever name is. Like there's a new property called name, which has the value of this variable. But if I do like name x, now the property is called name x, which takes on the value of name. So if I was to, let's just really quickly, I'm going to switch this back to string. So now hover over, now notice how I've got, stop. Hover over make user.
Okay.
So notice now that the property in there is called name x, which takes on the type of string. So this little change to the return type trickles down our code. And now notice how we have a new error on line 16.
Right.
Name does not exist on that type. Why does that happen, Rufio?
Well, because it's supposed to be name X, isn't it? Or is that not what you're asking, though?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So like it's complaining because the name property doesn't exist
Right.
in that.
Right.
Try fix that so that we get rid of that error. Yeah, boom. So name X is now a part of that. So the error's gone away. We've changed the interface of this function, right? This is really important because we're now going to step into interfaces. We're going to step into what an interface is used for, what is it, and why is it important.
Okay.
So if you hover over make user once more, over the function definition or whatever, doesn't matter. So this is an interface,
Okay.
right? Make user is a function that has a signature. The signature is, and the signature dictates like what you can call it with. Like this is what it looks like. So the signature has one parameter, and that parameter is name, and that's a string type. So what we're going to do now, we're going to define an interface for the returned value as well. So what we're going to do, Rufio, I want you to use the above make user. We're going to create an interface, right?
Okay.
Actually, maybe I'll take over for this. So in TypeScript, there's a keyword called interface.
Right.
My streams are a fire hose of information. Sorry, guys. This is the internet superhighway of super information. So we're going to define an interface, and we're going to call this interface user. right?
Okay.
So we're going to define the shape of what a user looks like. And in this case, we're going to make it, it's going to be an object that contains a property called name, and name has a type of string. What is the end goal here? You saw this example. I don't think Rufio knows what's up. We're trying to end up with. So the end goal, I'm not really have an end goal in sight. It's really just a slow introduction of concepts and why we might use them. And then I suppose in the future, we can kind of swivel that into like the like her dictionary project, where we can introduce TypeScript and make sure that we match interfaces and that we match things and we kind of remove possible errors. Zod's fantastic. If you parse user input with Zod, you pretty much guarantee no runtime. Yeah, Zod's amazing. I love Zod. So we've got an interface called user. Now, what's important to realize about JavaScript is that pretty much everything is an object, right? Arrays are objects, objects are objects, functions are objects as well, right? And we'll get to the what it means to define a function interface in a second. But for now, we've got a user interface. I'll split this up as another part of this. So we've got an interface here. We're going to create a. I'm going to put this in its own scope. It doesn't clash. So if we were to do this, there's no guarantee that, like, if we define a user like this and we go, Rufio. So at the moment, if you hover over user.
Which one?
That one, yeah. So notice how the interface is, it's inferred that name is a string. It inferred that it's an object and all that kind of stuff. But now add another property. Change the name property to name X, for example. Now hover over user again. So now it's taken on that new form, right? There's nothing like forcing it to be a certain type. So now I want you to add a type annotation for user and make it use the user interface called user. Damn, there's a lot of users in here. Probably should have named it something else. So add a type annotation. Nice. So now hover over user. So now we've told it that it has to be a user interface, right? It has to have the shape of that interface. So now we have a new error that appears. What's the error?
It's not assignable to type user. Is that because it's not name? It's not in the user interface?
Yeah, so nameX isn't a property that's been defined on that interface. So it's complaining. So we got to change our new user to match that interface. Bang, right? So now we've got a user object that matches that shape, and it's now guaranteed to have that shape.
Just got a raid.
We got a raid.
Hi,
Cool.
everyone. Hi, Coder
Hello,
Girl
all.
Chan. Thanks for the raid. We are learning TypeScript from scratch with Peter Boyer. It's how I should say
That's
your
me.
whole name. Anyway, they're also streaming at the same time. And if you have any TypeScript questions,
yeah,
for them.
There's another funnel. I got a command. How amazing! Oh no, there are some questions that are falling off the earth.
What were y'all
what's the
doing
goal?
today? Sorry, go on, Peter.
No, sorry. I'm just you go on.
I just got parrots up in here now. Love it. Yeah, what were y'all doing today? We're literally learning TypeScript from scratch, so it's been a good time. We're just barely learning interfaces.
Yeah. They were learning Vue apparently.
Vue. Oh.
The UI framework.
I know nothing about Vue except for React is comparable. Don't
Catch
at
me
me.
outside. How about that?
All right. So yeah, pretty much interfaces are there to enforce a shape of something, right?
Okay. They're kind of like classes.
Yeah, I mean, classes are a form of interface. So you can actually use classes as an interface as well.
Oh.
Yeah. But because most of the time you might be using simple objects to pass things around, so it is useful to add to define things as interfaces and then create an implementation of them later, which is what that video you watched last week did, or earlier on, where he defined an interface for something and he included like interface in the name, and then he created a class that implemented that interface. Anyway, so I want you to add a new property to user, make it age in the interface.
Oh. So what, we aren't using commas here, or we would be if it's more than one?
It's a slightly different syntax. They use semicolons to separate things.
Okay.
Right. So have a look at the error.
So because it's in user, it's required in user.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So you need to make it so that this new object you're creating matches.
You know what? I messed up. It's supposed to be the type, right? It's supposed to be number.
Nice. There you go. Cool. So yeah, now you've satisfied your interface. Now make another property. Call it, I don't know, what do you want to call it?
Favorite color.
Cool. Actually, that's a very, very good choice. Now, before you continue, hover over user. Let's look at the error.
Oh, this user. Oops.
So we solved it before by adding fave color. Hey, thanks for the follow, Coder Girl Chan. Welcome onto the journey of TypeScript. So what we've done is all of these properties right now are required, right? That you have to add them for the error to go away, right?
Right.
So you can actually make things optional, where the value could be undefined. You don't have to give a value, right? So what if this person doesn't have a favorite color, right? So what we can do in the interface is we can add a question mark after fave color to indicate that it's now optional, right? So now the error's gone away. And now we can, or we don't have to give a fave color, but we can if we wanted to.
They mentioned that in the video, the question mark, and this makes sense.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense.
So that question mark in this case makes it optional. So if you go to the user object and actually create a favorite color, like you can actually define a favorite color and actually give it a value. And you're missing a comma above it.
Oh, above it.
Cool. So now imagine you make fave color and make it true, like replace it with a Boolean true.
Oops.
Actually, I mean, it doesn't make. But notice how like it's now complaining that you're trying to assign a string where it's expecting true, right?
Right.
So if you're getting really, really big interfaces later in the future, this is a really great way to catch problems when you're refactoring code, right? Because you might be using this user interface in many, many different places, and then you want to change the interface or add a new property or make something optional, right? And now everywhere that it hasn't been defined, it's now going to complain, right? If you make something required and then it kind of is missing in certain places around the place, then it's gonna have a bad time. It's gonna tell you about it, which is really, really useful as well. So reset fave color to a string.
Okay, wait a second. I'm sharing this. It's not a very good video, just so you know. I'm sharing the video we watched.
A variable of names and assign a string to it.
The video
and then later on,
trash,
you can reassign.
I can make it stop. Wait a second. Okay, make it stop. It is trash, but they asked for it. We wouldn't recommend it. Peter's much better at teaching than
I don't
that
recommend
guy.
it. I was watching along with it, and I'm like, this is trash. Like, I'm confused, and I know TypeScript, and this is confusing. he's going about it in the worst way.
Okay. What were you asking me? Sorry.
All right. So change fave color back to a string. All right. So now I want to introduce you to actually hover over fave color, the bottom one. Oh, interesting. What types are there in TypeScript? A number is any number, integer, and real numbers included? Yes. There are many. There are a number of types. There are primitive types like a string, a number, a boolean, an object, unknown, never, any. You can look at the handbook. I don't know if you just joined. Let me just reshare.
Yeah, reshare
this stuff. Let me reshare. In here, there's a bunch of like breakdowns of the different primitive types, and then everything else is objects.
Also, I'd just like to re-emphasize, don't watch that video. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, that video sucks. Peter versus Code Stacker. Okay, I'll dump it in the trash bin then. No worries. Good idea. Probably for the best. Okay, so yeah, interfaces are really important because if you change the interface, you'll know everywhere that the interface is used, that something has changed, and then you won't get any things where like, properties undefined where it should be defined or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Sort of.
Yeah, so imagine you have this interface user in a separate file,
Yes.
and then from other files, you import that interface and use it in many, many different places.
Okay.
Right, so if the user that you're providing doesn't match the interface, there's going to be a problem at runtime potentially, right? So you're going to get a bunch of red squiggles everywhere in your code base where the interfaces don't match up, right? And the same thing could be said, like you could almost consider name, and you might be able to consider string as a type of interface, right? Where it's kind of like a string doesn't match a number, therefore there's an incompatibility with the two things. The same with interfaces that have different shapes. Those shapes, if they don't connect, then there's going to be a problem, right? There may be some properties that are a bit different, a bit off.
So it's like a mold essentially, like
it's pretty much like a mold, yeah. Mold, a shape, interface, like these kind of things describe a similar concept.
Okay.
So what might be cool is to introduce an array. So I want you to change user to be users with an S, kind of like a memory foam mattress. Oh, not quite. So leave the interface as is. The interface is describing one user object. Make the const users. We're going to make. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Did I do it?
Not quite. Let me jump.
What are you talking about here?
Yeah, here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then change it back to user, and make this whole thing an array. So we're gonna make this an array.
As opposed to we don't want it to be an object anymore.
Well, we want to put the object in an array.
Oh, okay. And then make another element in the array.
And yeah, make another one in the array.
Oh no, I made a mistake.
Beware, don't watch video. That's right.
Just barely copied that.
Should I lay off the Dark Peter jokes? I don't know, you might activate Dark Peter and get a ban.
All right, Peter, how old are you so we can put your correct age? Not that it matters, but...
I am 25.
I forgot about that. What's your favorite color?
I don't know, make it green. I don't know.
Beautiful.
Let's get rid of the red squiggles.
Whoa. Just let me do the prettier shit. Okay. Oh, you know what? I get it. I understand. Okay. This is a good moment for me.
Whose favorite color is green? I don't know, man. I don't really have one. I'll just pick one out of the... We'll make another user whose favorite color is red, and then we'll have the whole RGB thing going.
There we go.
Nice.
Why did it do this for me but not for you? The auto formatting.
Just because the line was too long, I think. I mean, or yeah, if you separate just one of them, I think Prettier will make it. If you save it again or format again,
It hates
maybe
it.
it's just the line's too short or something. But how? Why? They're the same length. I don't know. Maybe add a new line before name. Put a new line before name, and then try formatting. There we go.
He liked it.
Right. So, have a look at the users error. There's a squiggly on that one. So, what do you think this means?
It's saying that this is not an array, it looks like.
No, not quite.
Name, string, favorite color. Is missing name and age.
Username bull, favorite color red. That's great. So think about it, right? So we have a variable called users, and currently we're making it a user when we want it to be an array of users. So what do you think is causing this, right? Right, the interface is describing just one object, but we have an array of objects.
So could we say like array here, or would that not be cool? No, it's not. It's not cool.
Not quite. So I'm going to introduce you to a new syntax, right? After user.
Okay. Which one?
So after fuck yeah. On line 16, after the interface, right next to the name. So right next to, so just after user, add an open and close square bracket. Right. So what this means is it's an array of users. Right. This array must be composed of objects that all have the shape of user.
Okay.
Cool. There's an alternative way to describe this. There's two ways to describe this. You can do it in this kind of square bracket shorthand, or you can use array user. This describes it in two different ways. Most of the time, you can get away with just using square bracket one.
Is one like preferable over the other?
Not terribly different. No, they really just kind of almost mean the same thing.
Okay.
This is like an interface of a. I'm not going to go down that. No, we're not going to do that now. No. So I want you to add a new object to this array that's wrong.
All right. As the children say, bet. I think that's what the children say. Do you know what bet means?
A what?
Do you know what the slang bet means?
Bet. Is it like I dare to do something? Or
yeah,
bet?
like watch me sort of thing.
Yeah.
Drink.
You couldn't do that. Bet, and then off you go do it.
Yeah. I learned this recently. I'm very proud of myself.
The vernacular. It's time for a drink break.
Did you get a drink? I drank it just like a minute ago.
I'll drink then. Why is this an error?
Because it doesn't recognize this. It's not following the user interface. And it has
But also,
to.
fish is a variable that hasn't been defined. Because you're referencing a variable, not a string.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah, but still, you still get an error because animal property doesn't exist on user, right? The same thing applies if you switch this out. If you switch this whole object, this whole animal object, and replace it with true, or replace it with fish, like just replace it with anything that isn't an object, you'll get a similar error.
It's like just true like
yeah,
that.
Like true, like, or make another property, make it fish with like a string fish. That definitely is, that's syntactically wrong.
What's wrong with it? Doesn't love
Because you
it.
got to get rid of the animal. Just make it literally a string. Like just get rid of
just
animal.
fish.
Just fish, right? So you got all these. So now this is really great, right? Because anything that you put into this array will have its types checked, and there'll be errors shown if something doesn't work out quite right. Right? So you got boolean is not assigned to user. Fish string isn't assigned to user. So this is, more strengths for TypeScript. Cool. Now, I want to show you a union. So
Marriage.
let me show you what a union is. So in JavaScript, it's possible to do, let's just scroll up here. Can you see what I'm typing?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is possible in JavaScript to have a variable that is at one moment a string, and then the next moment you can assign it a number, right? This is totally okay because a is just a variable and you can store whatever the heck you want in it.
Okay.
So we could almost consider this, and if we wanted this to be allowed, you could say that a can be a string or it can be a number, right? So this is now what we've created is called a union.
Okay.
Right? And for anybody who's confused why I'm using let, I'm using let because I just want to be able to reassign whatever's assigned to A. I would get a syntax error if I tried to use const because A has already been assigned. That's why. Yeah, if you hover over A, you'll see a type. No, Jason. So you actually need a single one. The double pipe, the double vertical bar is an OR operator. But in TypeScript, we just use a single bar to indicate like an optional. So it's a different syntax for types. Oh dear, don't say that. That's not good. Oh dear. I'm gonna have to call your mother. So you can use bad language. All right, so yeah, a union essentially says this variable can be this or something else, right? So we're going to make, what should we do to better explain this? As part of the user, so as part of this definition, right? So at the moment, these two lines are having a bit of a complaint because they're not a user object. They don't match the interface. But if we wanted to allow them, we could make a union of true and, make it a union of fish explicitly, or we could make it a union of string, right? Now, there is a new error that's happened, right? Why? Have a look at the new errors.
It's making it a string, or it's saying it should be a string.
Right, so this is all really chaotic, right? So, name thing isn't assigned to this. So what's happened, right, is, yeah, I know, Dan, I know, I'm trying to prove a point, right? So what we've got here is, if I was to write it like this, what I'm trying to say is no. What I wanted to have said was I want an array that has users, booleans, or strings. But what I've actually accidentally said is users can be a user, or it can be a boolean, or it can be an array of strings, right? Whereas we want it to be an array of a user or a boolean or a string, right? So how do you think we might want to solve this? What do you reckon is what do we kind of need to do to group this all together?
Well, I cheated a little bit because I accidentally looked at the chat, but putting them on in parentheses.
Yeah, so chuck them in some parentheses.
Dan has ruined your plans. Wow.
Damn it, Dan. An evil font. Yeah, what's with the little boolean with the weird... It's like a backwards J.
Hey, why are we hating on
Linkage.
L's? Look, this F also does a little curly.
Have I got ligatures?
What are
Yeah,
ligatures?
but this is a proper lower L, which is definitely different from this. Come on now. Yeah.
Guess it's pearl necklace.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we've fixed it so that we've got user, it's an array of user objects, booleans, or strings. How's that?
That works.
Cool. It's also possible to, I think that now we've kind of gotten pretty far in this, let's start fresh.
Where do you close the braces for that union?
Hey? You mean, sorry?
That's Jim said, where do you close the braces for that union?
Close the braces for the union. I don't quite understand. I mean, we've got this, which defines like a group of things as a union. And then we've got the square bracket. And then, of course, after that's a definition. Oh, you can see it now. Cool. It's after fave color. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I just want to just interrupt for half a second. I only have 7 more minutes. So we can get what we can done in 7 minutes, but just...
Okay, cool. All right, so I also wanted to introduce something, like we'll make a new interface called foo. Actually, no, even before that. So imagine I have a variable called fave color.
Okay.
And it's a type string, which means that I can set anything to be a favorite color. I can use blue, I can use green, red. But imagine now I go, we're going to call this, I don't know, parrot. That ain't a color.
Parrot is my favorite color. We'll be honest here.
My favorite color is parrot. So very much, like now that we've got a fave color, and we've got it's of type string, we can actually...
You just left the session. Did you?
It's just, I'm going to try and rejoin. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but it just died. Yeah, they're actually enjoying the learning. All right, quick. All right, cool. So, it's also, not only is it possible to define a type string and then give it any type of string, but we can actually use like a literal string, right? We can actually make it so this is explicitly a certain color. So we can make it red. And now if you hover over fave color, notice that the type is now no longer string, it's of type red. Right?
Okay.
And this is useful if you want to allow only certain particular values, right? So I want you to now add more colors to this. So make it a union of other colors.
Okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Oh no. Or is that what you're talking about in the very beginning, the different types, right?
Well, so a string encompasses all strings, but it's also possible to make it a very specific string. Add another one, add green while you're at it. And give it a quick save and a format.
We don't like the format.
So notice how it removed those braces.
Whoa, wait a second. Oh yeah, it totally did.
So you don't actually need those braces there. It's only if you were like assigning it to an array where you needed to like keep that all together and array versus just having them open like this. Like this is also valid.
Oh, so you're saying because like the array was at the end and needed to be applied to every like case of type that it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now hover over fave color. And now see that it's now a union of must be red, must be blue, or must be green. So now get rid of the error. Nice, there you go. So this is kind of like you can have unions of certain particular values. So yeah, like for example, there might be some sort of value that indicates like success or okay, or what's the state of something. Are you pending? Is it loaded? Is it something been rejected and something been accepted? So you can use strings to represent that, and you can have a union of strings of only those particular things.
Wait, so you're saying that like this, like the use case for this could be like you could use like loaded, but like specifically loaded, or specifically like loading or something like that.
Yeah, something like this. Like imagine you have like a get state, and then the state could be pending, it could be failed, or it could be loaded or successful. Right? And then you have a function that returns one of those things. So if I try to return true, I'll get an error. Right? You want to hover over that error. There you go. So it has to be one of those things. So then if I just do a quick modification and make this pending, then it's happy with it. Right?
Right.
And you can also and unions can be used anywhere that a normal type was accepted. So like our previous example, we had an interface of user, which had, a name, had an age, and it had a fave color. We can actually move this kind of thing, move this whole property in here, and use it. So now you can use unions everywhere, pretty much.
Hmm.
You can also have an interface called dark user, which has a dark name, whatever. And then you can even combine unions of interfaces. So if we had a users array, it could be a union of user and dark user. And then you can have, and inside this, you can have a normal user, which would be like, Rufio, and age 24, fave color is red, or was it blue? And then as a separate object, you could satisfy the dark name parameter, which would be Peter. Right? But if I try to add age in here, you'll get an error.
So this is basically an or, but it could be an and as well, since these are both here together.
It's not so much an and. I suppose it is more of an and, yeah. It's more like saying you can have one entire interface of this shape or one entire interface of this shape as items of the array. They're not combining them, they're just kind of allowing them to exist in the same space.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like it can be this or it could be this. I don't know why it's not throwing a little error for. Can you show how to add extra type union to its own type variable? Fave color red, blue, green. Can use it within the interface. Oh, no, I mean, Dan can code. I've kind of chucked it up here. Hopefully that's good. Forget Leon. I want Peter to teach us from now on. Peter for 100 devs president. Oh, damn. I'm flattered, guys. Thank you.
Born, in terms of formatting, I have Prettier downloaded as an extension. So if I right click and I can say format document or format document with, and I can say Prettier and it will format it.
Yeah, it is possible, Rufio, if you go into your settings for VS Code, you can make it automatically say format on save, which is what I have installed, which what I had configured as well.
That is one.
So if you go control comma, you go control comma will open up the settings.
And just format.
And then format on save, probably. Oh, there it is. Editor format on save.
Whoa.
So if you click that, every time you save, we'll get nice formatting.
Excellent.
Don't have to keep doing it manually anymore.
Excellent.
Okay. I meant to show you can compose the interface from other types. Oh, yeah. And one last thing as well, like an interface can also include other interfaces. So I'm going to pull favColor out into its own type called colors, or we'll call it color. And then favColor can be of type color, and then you'll still get the same kind of type hinting. So if I change this to blue X, or let's call it pink. So now if you look at it, you'll get if you hover over favColor, you'll notice that it's not assignable to type color. And color is a union of different types. So yeah, you can also add booleans to unions. I mean, it depends on your use case, really. Yeah, so I know you're running out of time, you're about to go, but that's pretty much like TypeScript. So I guess in summary, I mean, do you want to do a quick summary of what you've learned this stream?
Well,
Yeah. And then we'll call it.
a quick summary. Okay. So the point of TypeScript is to limit errors in like before you push things to production by explicitly defining types or explicitly defining the type somewhere and then like some other element getting that type implicitly, I think. You can assign types to be like your standard like boolean, string, number, or you can like be explicit, like you can have your types be like red, like you said, like red string, and then if the type, let's think about favColor now, if the type doesn't match up with like whatever, like words are so hard. Okay, I can do this. We learned so much.
This is learning. This is it. Yeah.
Wait, what are we doing with foo?
I'm just go on. I'm just adding some code.
So basically the types can be pretty customizable, and like you would want like a specific word to be a type in the case of like state, like you define like if it's loading or if it's like loaded or it's not, you know. We just learned about interfaces, which are kind of like classes, but actually classes are interfaces, but they're basically like a blueprint for things, but specifically specifically a blueprint for types, it seems. And then you can use that later on, and if the like characteristics that were defined within user they don't match up the type, then it will throw an error. Or if you make them like, you can make them necessary, like you have to have like name whenever you invoke user, or you can put a little question mark and that makes it optional. So then if you get rid of like Rufio down here, like it should be chill, like it's fine. That's my friend. I have to decline her.
Almost there. You're going good.
Almost there. And then we have this thing that's called a union, and that just enables you to use different types or to like give the option of using different types within like an object or an interface or something like that, to make things an array of with like attached to interfaces. You just like tack it on the end of like user as like a little array, or you put array before it and then surround it with user.
Yeah.
And do you want me to go over this very, very beginning stuff today?
Very, very briefly. Very briefly. Like you can use the exact, if you scroll to the top, I just added some code that was very similar to what we used at the top, at the beginning.
Okay.
So very quickly, why is there an error on line 2?
Because, so we have the parameter within the function foo, and it's a string, but we set like the whole like result of this function to be equal to a number. So we're not even like, it's going to be returning a string, not a number. I think that's what's up. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also downloaded TypeScript, and then we also made a config file where we told it where it's supposed to look for the TypeScript files and then where it's supposed to output them. And we also downloaded, or we added TS Node to it so that we didn't have to, like, every time we wanted to not compile. What is the other one?
I mean, transpile, compile, it's pretty much the same, yeah.
Every time we wanted to transpile TypeScript code into JavaScript, which you do need to do because the computer can't read TypeScript, like you would have to write like TSC, and then you would have to go to your JavaScript, and then you'd have to run it. So like TS Node does that all in one. It's very exciting.
Yeah. Terrific.
We did it.
That's awesome. We went from virtually no understanding of TypeScript, watching a real shit video and still being kind of lost, to able to install the tooling, to configure the tooling, to understand why we would want to use TypeScript, understanding that it's a tool that helps us make less mistakes and catch them before we run the actual program. So it's called static analysis. And we learned about the basic types, combining them as unions and making simple interfaces, and also combining those interfaces into arrays so we can have multiple of the same thing. That's it. That was terrific. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I get TypeScript, and I'm very interested in like using in further projects, like starting to apply it now that we like explained it. Yeah. Thank you.
And then and you know, on the next episode we can you know, continue with this, or we can dive deeper. Now that we have like a basic understanding, I think the next part of it would be to take that understanding and then try to apply it to real stuff and face real problems, and see like a lot of kind of more real type incompatibilities between stuff, like by looking at your dictionary project and looking at like, you know, how can we isolate certain things into certain interfaces? How can we bring them together? And how can we like resolve any red squiggles that we come along along the way?
Right.
So, yeah, that was awesome. What a great stream.
Yeah. Are you gonna keep streaming, Peter? Because we can raid you if you are.
I'll just call it. It's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you for taking like 2 hours and 45 minutes out of your day to teach me TypeScript.
Yeah, no worries. It's fun. I mean, it's fun to teach. I'm glad you had a good time as well.
Yeah, it's good. I appreciate it.
And I hope everybody, and it looks like everybody else had a good time kind of seeing, because I think you having your questions and like all those kind of lots of obvious little questions, lots of like, why are we doing this? Why does this happen? How do we do this? Like, you know, like those kind of questions people would love to ask when you're learning along. So yeah, it's great. Everyone had a good time.
Yeah.
High fives, everybody. Woo, yeah.
Okay. Well,
all right.
I have to go hang out with my friends. I'm going to raid someone. Anyone have someone they want me to raid? And then I can let you go, Peter, since you are done.
Let's both raid them at the same time. We'll do a targeted multi-raid.
Ooh, yes. Okay, wait a second.
Let's line up the ion cannon and just shoot them down.
Ooh, we could both raid Alex. Do you know Alex?
Maybe I'm following him.
Yeah.
Alexander 6.
Yeah. Alex is so nice. I don't know, but we could also raid Leah, who's in 100 Des, but she's already got like 53 people watching her, and Alex has 3.
Yeah, we could. I mean, we could lay it down. I mean, you pick. Who are we going to go for? I'll follow.
What do we think, everyone?
Get these ads out of here.
Born wants us to raid Leah.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I'll keep it a VOD. Unfortunately, the beginning of my VOD doesn't have Rufio's voice, so it's up to you if you want to look at her VOD or my VOD.
That's funny.
All right.
Wait.
Cheers. Take care, everyone. I haven't left yet. Like, if you want to stick around for the raid, if we can raid with my powerful 4 viewers, yeah, baby.
I'm very excited. Very exciting. Wait a second. I like just barely lost like all of my pages. Let's raid Leah. Oh no, wait. Now we have equal. We have like 2 Alexes and 2 Leahs. Alex isn't the weightlifting dude. What are you saying?
Who did you call it? Who did you call it? I think Alex. No, Erend is the weightlifting.
Yeah,
guy.
Erend is weightlifting. Wait, we need a tiebreaker. I'm so bad at making decisions. Ponytail guy? Wait, who's Ponytail?
Ponytail guy. I think Ponytail guy is either myself or Togglebit.
Oh no, we just got 2 extras.
Jesus.
Okay, we're doing Leah. Okay,
All
but
right,
let's let's go to Leah really quick because she probably will have some what are they called? Some commercials initially.
All right. We're loading up the ion cannon. We're about to send all our stream viewers to Leah. Imagine if we raid each other. It's like, what the fuck happens then? What happens if 2 people raid each other at the same time?
I don't know. That's an interesting idea. Okay. I'm not even out of the ads yet. We got like 10 seconds. It's fine. Thanks everyone again for coming to the stream today. Thank you again for teaching me, everyone. Peter.
It's all good. No, thanks for it's been a good time.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See ya, Amber. Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Getting the raid queued up. Let's go raid Leah and see y'all later.
Bye.